Every so often, a gacha game does something that makes you go, wait, you're actually allowed to do that? This episode did it 3 times, not in the same category either, structurally, emotionally, and this is the one I really didn't see coming, in how it handled its own main conflict. So, when it opened up in 3 separate character POVs, all inside the same location, back to back, that was already the first surprise before the episode had really started. And it wasn't close to the last one. Going in, I had nothing to go on. We'd just come off a buffer update, no main story at all, so there was no read on where any of this was heading. I've been a fan of the anomaly concept in this game since before I even played it. Not the story specifically, just the concept itself. The idea that an anomaly can become literally anything. It's not locked into one genre, one tone, one flavor of storytelling. It's basically a blank canvas, and whatever the writers decide to put inside it, it just holds it. I've said that to people before and mostly gotten a shrug. Fair, honestly. It's a little abstract until you actually see it in motion. Well, I don't think I ever seen a better argument for it than this episode. We get dropped into the exact same anomaly 3 times back to back, and each time it's a completely different story wearing a completely different skin. We start in Daffodil's POV, and before a single line of dialogue happens, before anyone says anything, the environment already tells you what you're walking into. Everything's subdued, muted, predominantly grey with these deep reds bleeding through here and there, almost like bruising. Then you notice the detail that actually stops you. Every previous player Inanna has forced into this anomaly over the last few hundred years, they're still here, petrified, frozen exactly as they were in their last moment. It's not a jump scare, it's not thrown at you, it's just sitting there, quietly, in the background of everything else happening around it, which somehow makes it worse than if they'd made a big deal out of it. Some of these poses, if you actually stop and look, are pretty messed up, but the game never forces you to look, it just lets you notice if you're paying attention. Very loud, very quiet storytelling at the same time. I don't know how else to describe it. Then we cut into Linko and Nisha's POV, and it's like someone flipped a switch on the entire world. Green, blue, actual nature, actual life. We go from what feels like a forgotten battlefield to something that's practically breathing. The storytelling style shifts right along with it. Daffodil's section was thematic, symbolic, quiet. This one's cinematic, interactive, fun even. We get this whole sequence with a giant serpent chasing them through the first half, and it's tense. But it's also genuinely funny because Linko and Nisha carry that dynamic so well between them. Then there's the river. They fall into the current and we got this dynamic sequence of the two of them struggling, getting pulled along, fighting to stay above water. I was not expecting that level of production for what it is, on paper a pretty small character bit. I don't know what happened behind the curtain on this update, but the cinematics here felt like they jumped several levels above anything we had before. The third POV, our protagonist, Aben. This one's smaller, quieter, not in a bad way, just more contained. We're basically restricted to 2 spaces, a corridor and Aben itself. The corridor is black and white, doors constantly shifting around us as we walk through. It's not subtle, it's not trying to be, it's very straightforward thematically. This is what unlimited possible futures look like from the inside of someone's head. And honestly, that's fine, it doesn't need to be complicated to work. What it needs to do is sell you on how much this new home, this new life actually means to a protagonist who doesn't even have their memories back yet, and it does that job completely. So, 3 POVs, 3 completely different visual languages, 3 completely different emotional registers, all inside the same episode. But here's what actually got me once I sat with the whole thing for a bit. All three of these are doing the environment reflects mood thing well. That part's not unique, a lot of games manage that. Daffodils is doing something more specific. It's not grey because the story happens to be dark right now, it's grey because that's how she sees herself, specifically in this exact moment of her arc. That's not environment matching tone, that's environment functioning as a direct window into one character's headspace, frame by frame, choice by choice. So, if you ever wanted proof that this anomaly concept can hold literally any kind of story, any tone, any genre, any emotional register, I genuinely don't think there's a better example of it sitting anywhere else in this game. Okay, the story itself. Where do I even start with this one? This episode opens slow, deliberately, noticeably slow. And that's not a complaint. After a buffer update with zero main story, easing back in made sense. I didn't mind it. But somewhere in the middle, without much warning, it stops being slow. It hits like a storm. The first moment that really got me, and it's a small one, almost a throwaway if you're not paying attention, happens during Daffodil's section. She has to fight her way through a string of enemies, and given how many characters this episode was already juggling across 3 separate POVs, I fully expected these fights to just be filler, something to get through on the way to the next real bit. Instead, every single enemy gets a tiny fragment of backstory, a few lines, that's it. Some of these characters probably aren't even playable, we might genuinely never see most of them again after this episode. And I still caught myself caring about someone I met for maybe 8 seconds, who I will almost certainly never think about again after finishing this video. That's not an accident, that's control. That's a writing team that understood exactly how much weight a character needs to earn a reaction and hit that number precisely over and over without it ever feeling padded. Then the bigger realization hit, and it changed how I was watching everything after it. This wasn't just an episode, this was the conclusion of a 3-act structure that's been quietly building since the very beginning of the game. Everything the last 2 main story episodes had been setting up, all of it detonated here, on purpose, all at once. Which meant we got something gacha stories almost never give you, especially this early. Real, tangible movement on the protagonist, not a vague hint, not a teaser held for 2 years, actual movement. We've got a piece of the Anomaly Code 0 mystery actively breaking into the fight to help our characters, which, depending on how you read it, it's either a genuinely good sign or something a lot more unsettling, because we still don't know much about what Code 0 actually wants from our amnesic protagonist. Maybe it's hunting them, maybe it's protecting them, but none of that, not the enemy backstories, not the Code 0 reveal, was actually the highlight of this episode for me. The highlight is the very end. After the fight, after everything's finally settled, the protagonist wakes up in tears, and then everyone else does too. This kind of scene is rare in gacha games, period, and when you do get it, it's usually wrapped in a fully animated cutscene, a swelling score doing half the emotional work for you. The production carries you there, you feel something because the game is actively pushing you to feel it. The camera work, the music, all of it working in sync to sell the moment. This wasn't that. This was a normal scene, no animated cutscene, no standout score, just character models standing there breaking down. And it still hit harder than every animated set piece that came before it in the same episode. A lot of that weight is coming from Daffodil specifically. What she did last episode wasn't really a betrayal, it was a planned infiltration of Scarlet Letter. Something only 1 or 2 people even knew about going in, not even the protagonist. But she still lied to them to make it work, she still hurt them in the process, even if it was for the right reasons. And you can feel every ounce of that the second everyone's finally safe and the adrenaline wears off. The guilt just pours out of her. I am proud to admit it, I was right there with them, crying right alongside the characters. Now, the part I really did not expect to be talking about when I sat down to write this episode. Going in, I assumed we were still years away from any real structural movement on the main conflict. That's just how these games work. Generally, you don't resolve the thing, you extend it, You drag it out because dragging it out is supposedly what keeps people subscribed for years. NTE apparently didn't get that memo. Scarlet Letter, the organization that has driven this entire story since the very beginning, got dealt with here in this episode properly. Not softened into a to be continued, not left dangling for some future arc to eventually circle back to. And Inanna, who I was completely 100% convinced was this game's answer to a grand architect, the actual endgame mastermind pulling every string, she wasn't that, not even close. She was a piece, being moved by someone else entirely, an anomaly herself, caught in something much bigger than the role she'd been playing this whole time. So NTE pulled the rug out from under me once by actually finishing its main conflict, which almost never happens this cleanly in this genre. Then it pulled the rug out again immediately after by telling me the person I thought was the finish line was never the finish line at all. I did not see either of those coming, genuinely. I'm still a little stunned writing this section, if I'm being honest with you. And look, if you watch one of my latest videos, the one on Wuthering Waves' main conflict, you probably already know exactly why this hit me the way it did. If you haven't seen it, go watch it right after this one. I think you'll see the difference immediately, and it will make a lot clearer why I'm reacting to this NTE's episode the way I am. That entire video was me making the case that Wuthering Waves has every piece it needs sitting right there on the table. Fractious, the Trinodians, both of them could easily function as a real, active, driving conflict. And the story just doesn't let them. They react, they vanish through a portal, they wait for the next scripted beat instead of actually pushing anything forward themselves. NTE just showed me in real time what the version without that problem looks like. An antagonistic force that stayed in the foreground the entire time, that got resolved on screen as part of a conflict we'd been following since the literal start of the game, not dragged out for years because that's how this genre works, a sentence I am so tired of typing, and the story didn't fall apart because of it. If anything, it got more interesting immediately afterward, because ending Scarlet Letter didn't end the mystery. The protagonist's past is still wide open, the world is clearly still hiding things, there's obviously more underneath all of this. I don't even mean that in some vague there's always more secrets way, I mean it literally. Scarlet Letter is disbanded, Inanna's gone, but the actual people who made up that organization, they're still around. Take Poisette. She gets what's honestly the happier ending out of this. She's not held accountable for what she did as part of Scarlet Letter, and as far as we know, she just gets to go live a normal life now. Then there's Zanko, who, interestingly, is the one who actually delivers the final blow to Inanna, but because her involvement with Scarlet Letter ran so much deeper, she doesn't get Poisette's ending, she gets sent to prison. Two members of the same organization, same ending point, story-wise, completely different outcomes. I'd be genuinely shocked if we don't see both of them again, whether that's as allies, as complications, as something in between, I don't know yet, but they're clearly not done. And that's before we even factor in whoever else was part of Scarlet Letter that we haven't fully accounted for yet. So yes, we get a real conclusion, the main conflict actually ended, but ended doesn't mean vanished without a trace. The consequences of Scarlet Letter are still walking around in the story, we just don't answer to Scarlet Letter as an organization anymore. That's the version of resolved I actually want more of, not clean, not tidy, just over, in the way that real conflicts are actually over. The structure's gone, the people it was built from aren't. Wrapping up one conflict didn't mean the story ran out of things to say, it just proved pretty definitively that gacha games don't have to be scared of actually hitting the ending button on something. I keep landing on the same thought writing this. I went into this episode expecting a solid, something fun, something well produced, nothing more than that. I did not expect it to also become the clearest example this entire genre has given me of what an actively driven foreground conflict is supposed to look like. Daffodil's POV alone would have justified the whole three-perspective structure on its own. That ending scene alone would have justified the runtime by itself. And the conflict resolution, that's something I'm going to be thinking about the next time I sit down to talk about Wuthering Waves. I already know that. So, I want to hear from you on this one. Did that ending hit you the way it hit me? And now that we know what Scarlet Letter actually was, where do you think the story goes from here? Anyway, that's gonna be all from me for this one. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more story discussions like this one. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.